The European conquest and settlements of the Americas, at the beginning of the early modern period, brought about an immense and irreversible change in world history. Previously unknown peoples, cultures, and technologies would encounter one another for the first time, and rumors of ancient civilizations with immense riches and exotic treasures would spur stories of a fabled El Dorado, or a lost city of gold waiting to be discovered. Within a period of little over 40 years, the exploits of these Europeans would lead to the downfall of two once mighty empires, and in their place would be established the first truly global superpower. The histories of the conquistadors, such as Hernán and Francisco Pizarro, are well known and documented ones. Perhaps less well known are the stories of some of their contemporaries, who may not have gained the same fame and fortune in their lifetime, but nevertheless achieved remarkable feats of exploration and discovery with their ventures into unknown lands. In this 4-part miniseries, we will explore their truly remarkable and immense encounters in the New World. This is the history of the conquistador of Hernán Cabeza de Vaca. Born into the family of the minor nobility around 1490 in Jerez de la Frontera, near Cadiz, Cabeza de Vaca was schooled in the arts of war from an early age. He entered the retinue of the Duke of Medina Sidonia in 1503, serving as a page and chamberlain. Later, in 1511, he participated in the Italian wars against the French, and was wounded at the Battle of Ravenna in 1512. He returned to Spain the next year, continuing to serve the Duke of Medina Sidonia in a military capacity, helping to suppress internal revolts against the Crown of Castile, as well as fighting against the French, their invasion of Navarre. Then, in early 1527, he was appointed as the royal treasurer for the upcoming Narvaez expedition to La Florida in the New World, effectively making him second in command. The fleet of 5 vessels set sail on June 17, 1527, carrying 600 soldiers and colonists. In August of that year, they landed on Hispaniola to take on more provisions, as well as purchase more horses and ships before making their way to La Florida. While on Hispaniola, around 150 men deserted, perhaps after hearing of the disastrous expedition of Lucas Vázquez de Coronado to La Florida. To add to this setback, there was also a shortage of horses for sale on Hispaniola, so Narvaez decided to sail on to Cuba in the hope of securing some there instead. After arriving in Santiago, Narvaez was able to strike a deal for a number of horses, but they were located further up the coast at Trinidad. He instructed Cabeza de Vaca to set sail there with 2 small ships to collect them. While Cabeza de Vaca was ashore closing the deal, a hurricane wrecked both of the ships at anchor, resulting in the loss of 60 men and 20 of the horses. Once Narvaez regrouped with Cabeza de Vaca and the survivors, their fears of encountering more storms that could potentially jeopardize the entire expedition led to their decision to overwinter in Cuba, where they could replenish their losses by recruiting more men and buying more ships and horses. By February 1528, they had gained more recruits and acquired 2 new ships, one of which was sent on to Havana to take on more supplies before they made the final leg of their journey to La Florida. As the fleet rounded the western coast of Cuba, they encountered yet more storms and were blown off course into the Gulf of Mexico. Unable to counter the strong currents and reach Havana, Narvaez decided to head directly to La Florida and begin the expedition. Landfall was made on April 15, 1528, near what is now Tampa Bay. Upon arriving, the Spaniards came across a few nearby native villages. They traded some trinkets with the natives in exchange for fresh fish and venison. However, when they inquired about gold, the natives bluntly replied that they had none, but that the Appalachee region to the north was rich with it. In light of this revelation, Narvaez decided that the expedition should head north and claim this land called Appalachia in the name of Spain. On May 1, 1528, he split his forces into 2 contingents, one that would head overland and the other that would go by sea in the ships. Cabeza de Vaca protested, stating that it was too great a risk to split the expedition, as there was no certainty that either party would be able to find the other once separated. Narvaez dismissed his concerns, accusing Cabeza de Vaca of cowardice, and insisted that he join the overland expedition with 300 men, while the remaining 100 stayed with the ships. Reluctantly, Cabeza de Vaca agreed and marched north with Narvaez and the others. The overland march quickly became grueling. For 2 weeks, the men endured hunger and exhaustion until they stumbled upon an Indian village. There, they took the locals prisoner and helped themselves to the corn from their fields. Realizing their precarious situation, Narvaez hoped to rejoin the ships along the coast. However, neither of the 2 scouting parties he sent out could locate the fleet. With no other options, Narvaez ordered the group to continue north. Over the next 2 weeks, the Spaniards had varying encounters with the local natives, some friendly, others hostile. Along the way, they captured a handful of natives and used them as guides to locate Apalachee. On June 25, 1528, the expedition reached a large settlement with around 40 houses, believing it to be the capital of Apalachee. However, their hopes were dashed when no gold was found. While occupying the village, the Spaniards were attacked by the natives. After finding no other settlements or treasures nearby, Narvaez ordered the expedition to retreat south. The native guides told them of a village near the sea called Ort that had an abundance of food. Desperate and weakened, the Spaniards decided to head there. Along the way, they were repeatedly attacked by native warriors, losing more men. By the time they reached Ort, the village had already been abandoned and burned. The Spaniards scavenged what food they could, corn, beans, and squash to sustain themselves. Starving, wounded, and sick, the group was on the verge of collapse. While exploring the area, Cabeza de Vaca discovered a route to the coast. At this point, the decision was made to abandon the expedition entirely and attempt to reach Panuco, in Mexico, by sea. The survivors set about constructing 5 small ships, each capable of carrying 50 men. Out of the original 300 overland explorers, only 250 remained. Using makeshift tools and materials, they built the vessels. They crafted a forge from a log, used deerskin for bellows, and made hammers, saws, and nails from their remaining iron gear. The group caulked the ships with pitch from pine trees, used palmetto leaves as oakum, and sewed their shirts together to create sails. They killed their remaining horses for meat, and used the horsehair fore ropes and the hides to make water bags. On September 22, 1528, they set sail westward, hugging the coastline. Every few days, they went ashore to rest and search for food. When they reached the mouth of the Mississippi River, the strong currents dragged the ships into the Gulf of Mexico, separating them. Some ships were lost to a hurricane, including the one carrying Narvaez. 2 of the vessels washed ashore on the South Texas coast near present-day Galveston Island. Of the 250 who had set off from Florida, only around 80 survived, including Cabeza de Vaca. Upon reaching the shores of present-day Galveston Island, the survivors were in dire straits. Without food or supplies, and suffering from sickness and malnutrition, their numbers dwindled rapidly. By the end of the winter, only 15 men were still alive, including Cabeza de Vaca. Using their knowledge of the local tribes, the group moved from one community to another. They traded with the natives for food and shelter, offering healing and spiritual guidance in return. Cabeza de Vaca, in particular, became known as a healer and gained the trust of many tribes. Some viewed him and his companions as mystical figures with divine powers. After years of wandering, the group eventually made contact with Spanish settlers in July 1536 near Culiacan, in present-day Sinaloa, Mexico. Their appearance, dressed in native clothing and accompanied by a large group of indigenous followers, astonished their fellow Spaniards. The survivors were escorted to Mexico City, where Cabeza de Vaca recounted his incredible journey. In 1537, he returned to Spain and published a detailed account of his experiences titled La Relation the Report. His narrative provided a rare glimpse into the lives and cultures of the native peoples of pre-colonial North America and highlighted the hardships faced by the ill-fated Narvaez expedition. Cabeza de Vaca's later years. Although Cabeza de Vaca's adventures in North America were over, his career in the New World was not. In 1540, he returned to the Americas, this time as the governor of the Rio de la Plata region in South America. His mission was to establish a route to the silver and gold mines of Peru. As governor, Cabeza de Vaca attempted to implement policies that were more sympathetic to the native populations, advocating for their fair treatment. However, his administration faced resistance from settlers and rival factions. Accused of mismanagement and poor leadership, he was arrested in 1545 and sent back to Spain to stand trial. Although he was eventually exonerated of all charges, Cabeza de Vaca returned to the Americas. He spent the remainder of his life in Spain and passed away in Seville sometime between 1557 and 1560. Legacy. Cabeza de Vaca did not achieve the fame or fortune of other conquistadors, nor did he conquer vast lands or amass great wealth. However, his extraordinary survival story and his advocacy for the rights of Native Americans have cemented his place in history. His writings remain an invaluable record of early encounters between Europeans and the indigenous peoples of North America. This concludes the story of Cabeza de Vaca, a man whose experiences in the New World were both harrowing and transformative, shaping his legacy as a chronicler, explorer, and advocate for humanity. Sometime later, the remaining survivors were captured by local Native American tribes. They lived among them in captivity for several years. During this time, Cabeza de Vaca and his companions adapted to the customs of the tribes, learning their languages and way of life. This experience gave them a deep understanding of the various native peoples and cultures in the region. Eventually, for survivors, including Cabeza de Vaca, Andrés Dorantes de Carranza, Alonso del Castillo Maldonado, and an enslaved African named Estevanico, managed to escape. They ventured into the vast wilderness of what is now the southwestern United States and northern Mexico.